All right, friends, in today's video, we're going to be talking about one of the most popular brands of tractors, Kubota. Stay tuned. All right, Brett, to tell this fantastical tale, we have to go way back to 1890, Osaka, Japan, where we're going to find a young Gonshiro Ode. Now, young Gonshiro had grown up on a remote Japanese island, and he watched the ships go by as a young boy. Around the age of 14, believe it or not, he would leave home for the city of Osaka with the dreams of becoming an entrepreneur. So young Gonshiro would actually work as an apprentice blacksmith in Osaka, and he would work for several years.
And now you have to remember, around this time in Japan, there was a massive cholera outbreak, and it was affecting the lives of a lot of citizens. And young Gonshiro just wanted to make everyone's lives better.
So these core values of having environmentally friendly products that improve the lives of their customers have remained to Kubota to this day. But getting back to young Gonshiro, after working for several years, he would start the Ode Casting Iron Works Company. What was the first thing they really focused on making?
The first thing they really focused on was cast iron pipes for transporting water.
So this would help sanitize drinking water for homes in Japan at this time. And like Brett said, this was a huge undertaking because at the time, there was a lot of infectious diseases that were affecting the population greatly. So who was one of the biggest customers for Ode Casting?
Kubota match machine manufacturers.
So this would have been Gonshiro Kubota, who was a master in his craft, and he took an immediate liking to young Gonshiro, and he saw himself in the young man. And he actually ended up adopting Gonshiro, who changed his name from Gonshiro Ode to
Gonshiro Kubota.
So at this point, we're in the late 1890s, maybe like 1897 or so, and Ode Casting would change their name to Kubota Iron Works. So skipping forward a few decades, around the year 1922, Kubota would actually introduce and start manufacturing their first oil-based engines, which I believe ran on either kerosene or diesel fuel. So the reason for this advancement and this change was there was a huge need for agricultural advancements in Japan at this time. Up until now, everything would be manual labor and with animals, but they wanted to be able to use more machinery to help harvest different crops, rice, different things that they grew, and they needed a way to do that quickly and efficiently. Hence, the oil engine was born.
So it was very quickly thereafter that these engines started being noticed by bigger, more powerful companies, and Kubota actually ended up winning several awards throughout the next decade or two for their engines.
These are real high quality engines, and they couldn't be denied in the marketplace. Too much? All right, so we're just about to get into the tractor part of the video. So it'd be around the mid-1940s that Kubota would enter the agricultural market, and they would start off by making machinery and implements to help harvest and till the soils.
And then in the year 1960, they would come up with their first tractor, the T-15, which was actually the first ever Japanese rider-driven tractor.
So up until this point, there was a lot of resistance from the Japanese people. They didn't want these big, bulky machines because a lot of their lots were smaller, and they wanted something small and maneuverable, and they were used to using machines that they can control easily by hand. And so this was a huge change for the Japanese culture in this year, 1960.
Oh yeah, they're very old school, so to speak. That the Japanese people are very, this is how it is, this is how I like it, this is how it's always been. And so I know that, with anything, introducing something new to them is so foreign and so difficult.
But I have to imagine, even so, there had to have been several Japanese men that were smiling at this new T-15.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it would be only 9 short years later that Kubota would sell their first tractor in the U.S. market, and that would have been the L200.
So the L200s would have been, at the time, a pretty capable machine. It would have been a 21 horsepower, 2-cylinder Kubota diesel, paired up with a 2-range 6-speed transmission.
So that would have been 3 speeds in low and 3 speeds in high, totaling 6 total options for gears. So you had plenty of gears for different options and different jobs. These machines would have had about a 59-inch wheelbase. They weighed in right about 2,000 pounds, and at the time, they would have been a real game changer here in the United States.
And so then just 3 short years later, in 1972, Kubota would open the Kubota Tractor Corporation in Compton, California.
So over these next several years, Kubota would really blow up. And around 1973, they came out with a B5000, B6000, and B7000, which a few years later would transition into the 5100, 6100, 7100, and then the 52, 62, and 7200 series. And they also offered the mid-size L-Series tractors, which are a bigger frame, bigger tires, more capable for bigger jobs. So a great example of the L-Series would be this classic L305 that you see on your screen. And like I said, these were made for mid-range jobs. And I would say people with, 10, 15, 20 acres, this would be a perfect size tractor to help them maintain their property.
And they also offer the M series, such as the humongous M7950 that you see pictured on screen.
So these M series would have been for the biggest of jobs, and Kubota offered a humongous selection of tractors over these years, from a small garden tractor size machine all the way up to a huge full-size farm machine. And one of the big things with Kubota over a lot of the American offerings at the time was they all had the quality, legendary Kubota diesel engines, and they had four-wheel drive as standard equipment.
And that was a big deal, because you think of around this time, 1970s to early 1980s, your standard would have been,
Like a Ford 9N or something like that.
That it would have been very rudimentary compared to a Kubota.
And you also have to remember, a lot of these tractors that were coming from Japan, the ones that were used in wet areas like rice paddies, were probably shipped with R2 tires. So if you're not familiar, there's really 4 main types of tires. You could argue 5 or 6 now, but you have turf tires, you have ag tires, which are R1, you have R2, which are really like rice paddy tires, and then you have the industrial R4 tires, which are kind of newer. But you did not see many R2 tires here in the States, and these things looked like paddles on a wheel. So I have to imagine Americans at the time in the 70s seeing one of these little Japanese four-wheel drive Kubota tractors with these R2 super aggressive tires must have wondered, what the heck am I looking at?
They would have been thrown for a loop.
So also around 1974, they would offer the first fully rotational compact excavator. And around the year 2004 is when they came out with the infamous RTVs, which was a side-by-side utility vehicle. And Kubota offers a wide variety of machinery today in 2025, ranging from small tractors to bigger tractors to even construction equipment.
They do. They offer a lot of different things.
So as of today, Kubota has a humongous net worth of approximately $14 billion and over 52,000 employees.
Just think about that for a second. 52,000 employees.
Like my town, which is not a huge town, but it's probably 10 or 11,000 people, which is a pretty good sized town for this area in Massachusetts. For a lot of places, maybe in the Midwest, that would be like a big town. Some places that are more on the coast, it would be a small town. But to think it's like 5 of these towns, every single person in town works just for Kubota.
Yeah, I was going to say, my town is right about 2,800 people, so that's about 20 of my towns.
And that's not including like sub people. Like, think of all the people that work at tractor dealerships that don't really work for Kubota, but they do offer and they do
Kubota
sell
products,
and
yeah.
deal with Kubota products on a daily basis. So that 52,000, you could really argue, was a much higher number.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly an impressive thing. Certainly one of the larger companies as far as tractors go, and such an impressive tale to think all the way back when young Gonshiro Kubota left his tiny Japanese island at the age of 14. Who would have thought he made such an impact on this world? Good job, Gonshiro. Good job.